what is the leadership historical development over the since leadership came into in the industry, which is around 18, the industrialization thing, right? Where it was very manageable. It was very, I can't remember the terms of it. They have, of course, some term of what kind of management.
Scientific management, for example, right?
So what kind of management do you say?
Scientific management.
Scientific, yes, exactly. That's the word for it.
I recently heard an amazing story that I can tell you. I mean, the story model of thinking about it. So starts with Taylor and scientific management. So the idea that people need to be managed. People are resources, cogs in the machine, and the machinery needs to work. And most of the people are too stupid to think about their work, so they need to be told by their manager or someone higher up how to do their work. And that was the scientific management. Huge simplification, but for the purpose of this, that's good enough, I imagine.
Can I add something? I think actually,
go ahead.
In this article, they call that period of time, they call that the human resource management. Even though I agree it's also called scientific, but it was a Danish article I was reading. So it's very interesting to say human resource management, where people were just somebody delivering something, but not really whole humans and stuff like that.
It's a bit like a printer. When printer gets broken, you exchange the resource. You put a new printer and it prints.
Exactly.
You press few buttons, configure, bam, and up and running. And I guess that's Taylor. Wasn't he working with how's it called in English? The production lines.
Yes, production line.
So minimize the amount of movement needed, and then it's also easier to exchange that person. So that's like in the model I saw, that was step one, let's say. Or
can I add another one here?
Yeah.
If it's okay, we can
all the time.
Yeah. So when we look at how often people look what stress is in human beings, it is much modeling that, thinking that stress is something that when you hear the first and very not true version, but it's like the resources that you have as a human is not enough to handle the demands outside. It's just like the assembly line, right? So what can you do? You can either lower the demand or you can add more resources, right? I mean, that was just same thinking, same way of thinking. Yes, sorry.
And the funny part is that most of organizations still have HR, right? Human resources unit. And then in that model, step two was like we've learned that that's not a great idea. And the step two was systems thinking, systems modeling, all the places where you try to look at the whole system and understand the whole system and understand the relationship between different nodes of the system. And then you make an informed intervention, like this is connected to this. So I will change this. And probably this will happen. And then if it doesn't, you experiment a little bit, you talk to the people and so on. And that in that model was step two of thinking about organization. It's a system, and we need to model the system. We need to understand the system, and go ahead all the time.
So we have in the agile world, we have Craig Lahman, who is having a 3-day training on this very famous framework called LIS. And he uses a lot of the time for people there to understand system thinking and do system modeling and of the dynamics within the agile environment. And you get some really great what do you call that? Oh, shoot, the English word just disappeared for a second, but I'll come back. You get some really great learnings from it, something you didn't really think was how things were kept together. And in psychotherapy, we actually have a whole area called family constellation that is been adopted into the business world to become organizational constellation, where you actually see the organization as a system. And it's very interesting when you look at conflicts, when you often see two people are in a conflict, that if you see it as a system, it's not only the two people who's in the conflict, it is also the boundaries surrounded and the other people who is interacting and not interfering or whatever they do, right?
Yeah.
So it's a system thinking part. And at that note, when you go to the schools of primary schools, you have people who are being bullied, right? There they also use system thinking and say it's not the bully and the victim that is the only part
Yeah.
here. It's actually the whole class and their parents of the system, and probably also some of the other teachers, but they're not part of it as often. So system thinking makes it more thinking of the whole instead of only thinking about here I have a conflict, I have to fix it and do it, right? So
Yeah.
that was the 50s and 70s, 50s, 60s, 70s. System thinking was new.
Yeah, and I've been to the course with Craig Larman, and regardless of what I'm going to say next, I think it's a great course.
Yeah.
I think it's highly recommended to all the people in software development world. I think there are great reflections there.
Yeah. And it's also rational, right?
Yeah.
It's rational thinking.
And then the step 3 is like what we can see now is that it's less about trying to figure out the interactions of all the parts in the system. It's more about thinking about organization like an ecosystem or like something that emerges out of the complexity, where you very often have no clue how things are connected, how they work, and yeah, and you need to use different tools to try to figure out what might cause or what might create a change that you want to have in this system. And maybe, yeah, the person that is probably the best known here is Dave Snowden, and he works a lot on figuring out new ways of thinking about this. Uh, yeah, and I think that's very interesting direction. It overlaps a lot with he does something interesting. He's taking a lot of input from cognitive sciences in terms of how people operate, let's say, how human brain works, so all the cognitive biases and all those aspects, and he turns that into something practical in a sense of sometimes you hear about it, about some mechanism of how we work as humans, and it's like it's super interesting to find that out. But what do I do about it? That's the missing bit. And I think a lot of what Dave Snowden is doing, he's turning that finding into we can try to work with this way. So there's this tool, there's this workshop, there's this idea, there's this something very practical for the organization. It's like one of very one of many people who are working with complexity, emergence, and non-linear systems. Uh, but he's the most practical for business world one, and that's very interesting, I think.
I think David Snowden is very academia, and it's very difficult for non-academia people to understand and integrate what he's doing in corporate settings, because it's require a lot of knowledge and shared reflections
I agree.
to
It's
get to
very
that level. I've taken some
Maybe
courses with him, and I actually think he's a mastermind, right? He's really a great thinker, but it's really thinking, right? He's also trying to apply it. And what is the new framework called? Can you remember what it's called, the new one?
sense maker, perhaps,
No,
or
SenseMaker
the
is his company, right?
Asturian
Estorarian,
mapping. Oh
yes.
my God! My colleague Paddy was teaching me how to pronounce it, and I have no clue. I forgot. Asturian mapping.
Yeah, exactly. And it's about structures, organization structures, right? Within, which is very, very interesting. And is also, it's beyond my understanding, but I would like to learn it and use it, but I have no idea how to apply it in a company. I mean, how do we get people to think this is a fantastic way of working with it? I mean, this is probably still on the edge.
Yeah,
Right?
I think I completely agree with your reflection academia thing, which is in the language. So when we did this exercise of mapping the estuary, each time it took a lot of time to go through the new language that is being introduced. And I think that unfortunately is not good. It doesn't serve well the method or the framework or however it's called, because for a lot of people it just won't work. It won't work when you need to go to figure something out with executives. You need to go through 2-3 day training with them. It's
Yes,
just so
doesn't know.
difficult. I mean, it's so difficult for a person like me, because I imagine if they pay a lot for to some company who will sell that, package that as a new fantastic way of doing things, then it will fly probably. But for a person internal in the company, I think that's
Yeah, exactly.
hard sell.
It
Hard
needs
sell.
to be the consultants selling new wine. Oh, sorry, old wine in new bottles. Yeah, yeah,
Perhaps that would help.
yeah. We can sell old wine. Oh, sorry, new wine in the old bottles. They want to see the bottle is the same, but we can change the wine within. Yeah, that might be a good metaphor. So when you're a consultant, you could just sell. Yeah.
But
No, yeah.
the
So
language is very difficult, and it in the end, when you look at the how you do it, it's actually very simple. It's not simple like in a sense of still a lot of work and a lot of things to do, like actions to take, and a lot of ocean to go through, and that's tough.
mm,
But it could be explained in an easier language. But I think it's a bit like Scrum was, I don't know, 20 years ago. We don't use the simple language because you need to learn the new language. Because if
yeah,
you don't
yeah,
learn the
yeah,
new language, you will do things the old way. So you don't analyze requirements. You refine the product backlog and so on.
yeah. Exactly. Exactly, yeah. So we need the new language in order to change the way we also behave, so we don't go back to our biases because we use old language that we are biased to understand what. I get that.